Hey everybody, happy Friday. And you know how we like to kick off our weekend with a little live stream. And today we're going to be continuing our Creating an Epic World series with the Fantasy Battle, or Fantasy World, sorry, Fantasy World style. And in this part 4, we're actually going to be covering bodies of water. So that means our rivers, our lakes, ocean painting. And if there's any time left over, then maybe we'll get started on biomes. But I'm kind of doubting we have a lot to cover there. But I'm super excited about this because we have some pretty dang cool ocean painting techniques that I want to share with you. So let's just get started with that right now. So one thing you'll notice about the ocean on this particular map that we're working on is that it's all seems to be the same kind of bluish color. It seems very flat. How do I know which region is deeper and shallower? How do I know where there's more tropical water over more deeper, colder water? Is it that I portray all that stuff? And it's pretty easy. It's just you use contrast to create depth. So if you wanted to show a deeper section of the ocean, then you would use a darker color. And so what you'll do is very simply go over to your brush tool, make sure your BG is selected, your background layer, and then just choose a darker blue color. So you notice that this blue right here, blue texture that I have is darker than the texture I already have there. Set that to BG layer. And then what I'll do is I'll set it to about 30%, about 30. And then the trick here is that wherever you want the water to be deeper, that's where you're going to paint it. And what I generally do as a starter is I paint the most furthest parts from the shoreline because I'm going to let some of the lighter texture that I'm painting on top of to represent the more shallower water. So you start in the center without actually touching, don't actually touch the actual, your land masses when you do this. Let me scale all the way out so you can kind of see it as I'm painting. And just don't touch where your and don't lift up the pen. Just do with one stroke going all the way across. Fill it all in. And then in here too. Oops, looks like got some lag here. Might be a little slow here. There we go. Sorry about that. A bit of lag there. Once you've done that first layer, then go further out and then start painting. And so we'll go in like this and then just do your single clicks and just start getting it nice and deep. And you'll start to see the contrast as it starts to come together. You can see which parts of the ocean are deeper. So I want this nice deep part right in here. Furthest away from the land, it's probably going to be the deepest, right? And then we'll do a little bit of single clicks in here to give that nice depth. And then we'll go back over here and get nice and dark. Okay. And just so you know, to accomplish the kind of look that you want, it's just always going to take multiple strokes. There's no way that you're probably going to go in and just do it with, one or two strokes. It takes a couple to kind of get it right. So just kind of ocean paint your way here. Okay, cool, awesome. All right, this looks good so far. And you already have that nice. Now, if you want to show, let's do some interesting tricks I think you'll like. What happens if I want to show that there's a part of my landmass that's like a cliff? It's deeper or higher up, and I want to show that depth. You can totally do that using your ocean color. So, and then just take the opacity, put it up to 100%, bring it real small, and I'm going to show you a little neat trick for showing height on your map. So let's say that you want to show that this part right here has some cliffs. You'll take this darker color right here like this, and whatever face is towards you like this. So if I go like this, and then I'll take a step back in a second. Have you take a look, and you can see that it looks like it's a little bit higher. So with ocean painting, you can create this sense of depth and height by just simply painting the edge here like this. So I really want to show that there's some depth on here. And so just painting a dark, dark blue along this ledge right here is going to make it look like it's the shadow of the cliff, and then it's going to make it look like it's popped out. So there's a nice little trick if you want to add a sense of depth to your land masses, just simply using ocean painting to do it. And you would just make it bigger to make it higher up. So if you wanted to show a very tall cliff, then you would make it much thicker, right? See how thick that is? If you wanted, we'll undo that. If you wanted to show a cliff that's not quite as high, then you would just make it thinner. So a nice little trick right there is adding a little bit of depth, and you can see those parts. So just remember that trick, and you don't have to use that dark blue. You could even use black as a color as well. You go black, but I would recommend bringing the opacity down because it's so thick, probably around 70 or so if you're going to use black. I like to use blue because it's the same color as the ocean, but you can use black if you want to show a little bit of depth. So you just go in here and you can show some depth also using black. Me personally, I prefer to use the blue, but you can use black if you want to show maybe that this is where there's no shadow, where there's no light. If you choose a light source, you can use that black to create a heavier shadow. Okay? So there's a nice little, there's two nice tricks. It's just to show depth, you make it darker to show contrast. And that is pretty much that trick. Hey, for both, hey, that 3 first-time chatters. Hey, all 3 of you, welcome. I'm so glad that you guys are here. Yeah, so pretty easy. We're making a world map. So, and we're actually part 4 in this series. If you missed part 1, 2, and 3, go check out YouTube. You'll see a bunch there. And then when this is done, we'll upload this to YouTube as well. So we're at part 4 here. Let's continue the ocean painting. So one thing I might want to do is maybe continue making a little bit darker. So maybe I'll take it at 100% and then just make it extra dark over here. Oop, that's a little too dark. Let's undo that. Might be a little slow to load, causing a little bit of lag there. Just going to undo that. And I'm going to bring the opacity down. I realized that that was a little too dark. And I just want to make sure that I really show these dark sections. I really want that to be in there. So let's make sure we get that in there. And here too, I want it to show that it's real nice and dark. And a nice little trick you can do is you can do single clicks to show an interesting transition. So if I go like this and I just do single clicks like this, you can show some interesting transitions in between there. Let's bring it even down a little bit more. This is the same technique that I use for blending biomes as well. I'll do this single click thing. And the single click thing is just a way to kind of blend everything. Oopsie, I did a little too many single clicks there in that area. The only time I recommend doing this is if you want to do some blending here. There we go. And I'll go back over here and get some single clicks in here. Nice little technique. The technique is called diffusion. It's where you have a very thick line right here between 2 shades of color here. And then this diffusion breaks up that line by doing little clicks. So remember this nice blending technique of doing single clicks when you want to create that. So nice little trick. Just know that when you do those single clicks, you can see here at the bottom a lot of changes. So 279 changes. So texture blending is just labor intensive. And that's okay. And my recommendation is that you save it after doing so much texturing like that, because all these changes happen. You don't want to lose your work. So after this saves, we'll go on to the next step is that you really do want to create the land masses to pop out more. Now, there are 2 ways that you can go about doing this. The first one and the most easiest one is just to use mask effects. And I didn't use the add mode of the mask tool to create these land masses. I actually used some stencils that I made with the shape tool. I'll actually provide the link in the chat to those landmass stencils. They're made with the shape tool and clipping mask. Just know that when you do use those, you won't be able to use mask effects. And that's the only downside. But the one thing about not being able to use mask effects is that you can create your own. One thing that you as a creator or a user might have noticed is that you can't have different mask effects on different continents, right? They're all uniform and the same. But what happens if you want to show that there is maybe some greenish like water around your tropical land masses, right? In that water. What happens if you want to have a bluer or a whiter color because there's cliffs and you want to show some mist? To do all that stuff, you can't do it with mask effects. You can only do it with painting. So let's show how to go about doing that. And what I will do is I'll usually take a lighter color blue if I can find it. And if you can't find a lighter blue, the blue you're already using, then you just take you just take the blue that you already have and go to advanced settings and just bring the brightness up. Let me just apply this real quick and just see how much brighter this is. Okay, that's pretty bright. Great. So let's go ahead and bring the opacity down. Let's go with 40. And we're just going to jump in here. And what I'll do is I'll just go along this edge right here. Let's go even above 40. Let's go with 50 something. And you can just paint along this edge. And one thing that I like to do is that you don't have to have it all be the same. So here, if I wanted to show that there's some shallow water right here, I just go in and just single click some light color along this edge to kind of create this shallow water. Just single click it. And then you can also, when you step away from it, let me just show you what we worked on so you can see it from a distance. And you'll see you have some shallower water here. So using a similar color to create the more shallower sections. So let's just say that I want this whole section right in here to be kind of shallower water. And just put those along this edge here, like this. And I'll just single click along this edge here. Just follow it all along here. So pretty easy stuff. Again, with mask effects, it's just all uniform. But with this technique, it's just a lot more interesting. You don't have the ability to take the shadow around it, by the way, Jonathan Frost, unless it has a stroke. You could totally create a clipping mask stroke, probably, and then turn the shadow on for that. The only downside with that is that you would have to make sure that the fill is above the stroke, because when you have a stroke, the shadow applies to the fill. So you have to make sure that the stroke is below the fill with the layers, and then that way you can have a shadow that pops out, okay? I'm not going to do that one here because I personally like to hand paint my my ocean painting because I think it just looks more interesting. But you don't have to do that. You can totally cheat and just use mask effects. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what the mask effects are for. Let's go ahead and just kind of create even more lighter color here, because this is where kind of the where our colder biome is, a frigid region. And so I'll make sure to put lots of lighter color here. Remember I mentioned, what happens if I wanted to show a tropical area? My equator is in the center right here, because I'm kind of using a similar Earth physics for this one. And if that's the case, maybe I want to use a green color to do that. What I'll use is the same color that I'm using right here, but I'll go over to color adjustments. So if you scroll down, you'll see there's a little scroll bar here. Scroll down and just make sure that you can see the hue a little bit. And then you can change it to like a greenish color if you need to. Let's boost the saturation up to make sure that I can really see that green. There we go. And then just bring the opacity down a little bit. You don't want it to be too much. And then just apply it where you want that ocean green to be, right here. And so I'll apply that here. There we go. That looks good. So we got some nice green, little shallower green tropical color here. I think that looks good. I don't think I'll add it right there, but right here looks fine. Okay. And then from here, I can use a nice thicker white line to kind of represent my shoreline. Let's bring it down a little bit. And then I'll just kind of place it all along this edge right here. I think it's a little too dark, a little too much, sorry, not dark. That's not the right word I'm looking for. Let's go with 35. Here we go. Okay. All right. Well, you know, when it comes to lore, I hear you in the chat there. You know, when it comes to lore, guess what? I do that after I create my landscape and my terrain, because the lore comes from the land itself, right? I don't generally come up with the lore first. And the reason why is because my land decides the lore, right? Wherever the landscape is, that's going to tell me about my lore. Like, how am I going to know about a desert unless I have a desert there to decide, or a wasteland? Without having the landscape, my world created first, the physical world, it's hard to decide the lore, right? So we'll be adding lore as we go along. So for now, I'm not going to describe a lot of lore because there's no point in adding lore quite yet. We're still in the development, in the creation of the world. And so it kind of makes sense to wait. And this is the way the real world works too, right? How do you know what a religion of a civilization is without the region in which they live in? Is there a volcano there? Do they worship a volcano god or goddess, right? So for me, the landscape really determines most of your lore. And I start there first, only because it's just easier for me. Other people may have some galaxy brain and it may be easier for them to come up with the lore first. But I find that that part is just harder. So, and this is really a matter of personal preference. Which do you like first? Do you like to create the lore first, or do you like to create the land? It's all personal preference. Me, again, just the land makes more sense for me first. Okay. All right, let's just go ahead and continue just shading along these lines here. And then after we've done our painting here, guess what? We are going to be doing our rivers and lakes. That's right, the chicken or the egg. Nope, it is always, for me, it's all a matter of opinion, I swear. So many people like different things, right? It's all personal preference. There's no real wrong way to make a map, in my opinion. It's really just about figuring out what works best for you, right? If you find that it's hard to figure out your lore, then start with the land. If you find that lore is easier, then start there. So it's all a matter of opinion. And now I'm starting to sound like I'm just repeating myself, so I don't want to bring it up too much. Yeah. Oh, well, that's good information, by the way. I like to hear the way people do things. And I like it when people do things differently than I do, because then I get to learn a new thing, right? Why do I want to be able to learn things too, right? All right, let's just keep doing our painting here. This takes a little while. But you know what? All this painting, it pays off in the end, I guarantee you. So maybe it takes more time, sure. But it pays off in the end, I guarantee it. It really, really does. Because you get these nice effects, right? Again, I just don't like the idea that I'm limited to the mask effects and just one region, all the same regions have the same effects. And I just think that looks kind of weird. And again, nothing wrong with that. Just not my cup of tea, I guess. Okay. But we will be going into, once we finish building much of the land stuff, like once we start adding in the biomes, which is going to be the next episode, once we start adding in all of the locations on the map, that's when I'm really going to get thick into lore. And believe me, I've got some lore lined up for you. I had a little bit in the beginning, but it was just kind of a creation story to kind of get it started. But for now, this part of the video, I'm just going to be focusing so much more on just the processes of making the map, and then we'll go into the lore stuff, because I kind of have some cool ideas for this. And of course, if anyone in there, any user who's watching has ideas about what they like in the world, I'm open. Be open. If you have names for locations or certain biomes that you want to see, let me know, because I will gladly do that. I like to think of it as a joint venture. I think it's more fun to work on a map with a group of people than it is to kind of do it on your own. So I really look forward to hearing people's suggestions and what they want to do. Okay, been chatting for a little bit. Let's take a step back and look at it. And already it's starting to pop out so much. I'm really liking that. Let's go ahead and throw down some more lighter color in here. Like this is a little bit shallower right in here. So I'll single click inside of here to make that shallower, and here, a little shallower in this spot. It's going to be a little shallower inside of here, and here, along this edge here, inside of this one. There we go. Cool. All right. Looking good. All right. Cool. All right. I'm liking this. We're getting it together. Get some shallower water inside of here. Perfect. There we go. Awesome. All right. Okay. Well, we're at 421 changes. Whew, that's a lot. Yep. I mean, for me, a map grows the same way. I mean, a map has a life of its own, right? It starts with, your land masses, and then it just slowly evolves and it grows. And the more and more that you add and more details, the more and more lore will come to you, right? Once you start building this desert biome, ideas about the people that live within the desert will start coming to mind. The world begins to come together as you start to pull together the lore and put together the landmass. So I really kind of like that way of building. I find it very useful. Okay. So I think for now, this is pretty good for ocean painting. We can do more later. Generally, I go back at the end and kind of cover all the processes again. Like, oh, I don't like the way that I did the ocean painting, so I'll go back and redo some sections. But you start a little bit, and then you can go back to it later for your finishing touches. So it's a good place to start. Yeah, well, I do want a good. We're going to create a nice, fancy world map because I want to have every biome you can imagine, including Fey, Evil. We're going to add it all. Okay, so let's touch base on lakes and rivers. So, with a river, there are a couple ways that you can approach a river. There's different tools that you can use. The most basic way to make a river would be to use the subtract mode of the mass tool at the smallest brush size. Now, the problem with this is that the brush size only goes down so small. And so what happens is that you start to feel that your rivers might be a little too big in comparison to the scale that you want them to be. And so you do have some options. With the line tool, you can do two things. You can use a river stamp right here to create it, or you could even use a color to do it. Just find the color that you want to match around the same color as the ocean around there, and then change that blend mode of that to color, I believe. And then it will also pick up the artifacts underneath it. And so you'll also have that. So those are the three ways that you can make a river. You can use the subtract mode of the mass tool, which is limited by its size. You can also use the line tool, and you can change the size. So if you want to bring the size down really small, you can. So that's one of the upsides of using the line tool for this. The next step is deciding where to put rivers. Now, for me personally, I try to put rivers on every continent, and this, when it comes to the scale, it all depends on what you're looking for. The smaller the scale, generally you don't even see rivers. Go onto a world map and go to a world map of the Earth, and you'll notice that rivers are barely even noticeable on a map, right? Because it's just at that scale you wouldn't be able to see them. So that's the beauty of a fantasy world map, is that you can show the river. You can break off scale just a little bit. Obviously not too much. I don't want a river that's looks so massive that it's out of place, right? But I also want the rivers to be big enough to where I can actually see them on the map. Now, let's talk about where a river starts. Rivers start up in the mountains, usually what's called the headwaters. And headwaters are generally going to be in the mountains, and it's usually a mountain lake. And those lakes are created by rainfall and snow melt. Okay? Rivers start in the mountains, and then they go downhill in elevation, not south, but downhill in elevation towards the ocean. Now, if you wanted, I don't normally put mountain lakes, actually show a mountain lake on my maps, because they'd be so small you probably wouldn't see them. But let's just say that you have an important mountain lake in your campaign that you absolutely want to portray, because you want your players to go to that mountain lake and have an encounter, or it's an important part of your campaign or part of the storyline or whatever. Then we need to figure out how to make that. And so what I will do is I'll show you a cool little trick when making a mountain lake. So the first part is we'll have to make the lake. And to do that, we'll simply use the shape tool to do that. So we're going to fill. I'm going to go ahead and choose a texture, and I'm just going to choose the same texture that I used for my water. And I'm going to use the brush tool. And the thing with the brush tool is that you're a little limited on your size. You see the size 5? It's a little big. Don't worry about that, because the real nice trick about using this is that you can scale it down once you've made it. So let's just build a shape that I want my lake to be. We'll go with this shape right here. There we go. Now that I have that shape made, I can just bring the scale down, right? There's step 1. And I want to put this lake behind a mountain. So I might want to put it like right here like this. And then I might want to take some more mountains and then place them behind the lake. So push it down a scale. We'll change that blend mode to luminosity, it looks like. There we go. Okay, let's bring it down the proper layer to make sure that that blue water is there. Oopsie, my mistake. I have the blend mode on. Let's change it to normal. My mistake. There we go. Okay, so there's your lake. And what we want to do is we want to put the lake in a position to where you can see it, but at the same time, it has to be nestled in the mountains. So we'll have to position a couple mountains to fit in there. And so we'll go ahead and place this here, one on top right there. Okay, Let's just bring the scale down. There we go. And now we have a nice mountain, little mountain lake. Just right there. So there's your easy little mountain lake. Now if lakes are where the headwaters are, now they need to travel going down the mountain, going out to the ocean. So we have a couple options here. This lake is a little bit closer to this part and closer to the ocean. So now I'll just go ahead and decide to use a shape or a line for my ocean or for my river. Sorry about that. And here's the trick. So for me, this is all about scale, right? If you want to show that you have a very small scale, so you're very zoomed out, then when you're doing your river meandering, you're going to want the meanders to be pretty small, right? See how small these meanders are? They're not big. They're pretty small the way that they are, right? That represents that you're at a much zoomed out scale, right? If I was to make the meanders bigger, then the scale would be a lot bigger, right? So if I go like that, now that's a little big. See, remember we talked about the scale problem? Let's bring it down a layer so it's below that. And let's just bring the stamp scale down. There we go. And then you can really, really bring it down, 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 nice and small. There we go. Okay. Now, other things is that you might want to create tributaries and some parts that break off. So you might have a river go off to here like this, and then it goes nowhere, right? The river's not splitting, it's just stopping right there. And the way I put these little parts that break off is on the edges where they're popping out. So right here, like this, popping out, right? Same thing here, popping out right there. And so you have these little parts that kind of break off like this, okay? Now, what happens if I want to create like a river delta? If you're not sure, a river delta is where the current of the river is not strong enough to push the silt or the dirt away from the riverbank enough. And so what happens is it starts to create what's called a river delta. And so the way that I create a river delta is just to have multiple branches that lead off. So multiple mouths that go to the ocean. And that's going to represent your river delta. Okay? There you go. So kind of a nice little trick there on putting your rivers together. Let's make another one. Actually, let's make a lake. Let's make a river that goes to a lake, and then it connects from that lake to another river that goes out to the ocean. So let's go ahead and create another shape that I want to use for my lake. Remember, it's only size 5. So you have to make an interesting shape that you want, whatever it might be. There we go. And that shape is super globby, but if I scale it down a little bit, there we go. All right, and you can even copy and paste and take a couple. So I want to have like another one right here. Make this one a little bit bigger, then put this one right here. Make it a little bit bigger, like that. Okay. You're kind of getting the general idea. And you can put a series of lakes in here. Put one over to here. There we go. And then we'll connect these lakes using a river. So then we'll go in, grab that river. Let's scale in here. Have the river kind of coming down through here. It's not coming from that mountain lake. It's coming from a different one. Though it does kind of look like they're coming from a similar thing. So we might want to move the mountain lake over to here instead. So, or move this over to here. And just remember, use smaller meanders. Don't create big ones. If you were showing in a regional map, then your meanders would be a lot bigger, right? Like this. That's like a much bigger, much more scaled in, right? But for these smaller scales, you definitely want to do it the other way. So let's go ahead and just add these. Let's connect these together. And again, you can have sometimes multiple headwaters can fuel a river. So if I can go in here, I'll create another one that connects into this one. And then maybe another one that connects down into this one. Okay. Now, normally the river would get a little bit bigger because there's multiple sources. You could do that. Let's also change the brightness on these. I'm noticing that the texture that I'm using for the lake is a little bit darker, and so it just looks odd. So if I just bring the brightness down like that, then it should be able to kind of match around the similar brightness as the lake that I'm using there. Okay, you guys are getting the general idea. So putting it together, pretty easy stuff, making your rivers and lakes here. And we've already done quite a bit here with just 30 minutes, so that's kind of nice. I might want to even select all of these as well. Select all this style, and then just bring the brightness down. There we go. Much better. Okay, cool. All right, and let's continue having this river go towards the ocean. And then we'll create a whole bunch of little tributaries that kind of branch off as well. I might even want to consider adding a little bit of a stroke to the lake as well, just because right now it seems to be just like a blotch of blue. But if I add a little stroke to it, and then maybe make the stroke a white color, I might be able to bring the stroke size down on it, and then it might look more like there's some edges there. And then I'll push these, let's see here, let's push these up a layer so that they're above the river parts. There we go. Okay. So not complex to put rivers together, right? And it's super important that you make your rivers and lakes first, because bodies of water plays a huge impact on biome development. Remember when we first started, the land masses, we put down mountains first as the first stamp, because mountains are so large, they play a huge role in biome development, and so do bodies of waters like lakes and river, right? Water plays a huge impact on biome development. So right here, where this rivers and lakes is right here, this whole area is what's called a watershed. Okay, anywhere where there's water on land, that's called a watershed. So now there's all these different things that we can put, all these different biomes that we could put around this river. We could put swamps, we could put wetlands, we could put a forest, we could put all kinds of different biomes around this into this what's called a watershed. So super important to remember that before you place any biome, so start putting down stamps for trees, for dunes, all of that stuff, put down your mountains and your bodies of water first. Again, both of those things play a huge role in biome development. So let's also just kind of create some splits here, but not obviously going to the ocean, so the river's not splitting. It's just branching off and creating those tributaries. Remember that trick. You can have it just branch off like this, just have it go off, and then just didn't have the power or the force to go any further, right? And so it stopped there. Or there was something there that kind of stopped it. And if you're wondering why the rivers meander, one of the big reasons is that the land is not flat, right? There's all this different stuff that gets in the way. All this terrain gets in the way of the water's flow. And so it's good to have that part, and it really makes it a little more interesting to kind of have those meanders on there, okay? And then you can also have bodies like a river that doesn't actually go all the way to the ocean, right? It just stopped for some reason. It went to here and then it just stopped. And you can have it branch off like this, and it never made it. The river that couldn't make it, sorry. Right? Okay, cool. Already 33 minutes in. Let's go ahead and save. We're going to add a whole bunch of rivers and lakes. I want to make sure to put some predominant lakes on here, because eventually we're going to put a civilization that kind of lives on a lake. I know for sure that I wanted to have like a lake town. That would be kind of fun, and so we'll have a civilization there, and maybe that will even be the start of where our players for this campaign or for this map will start, as at this kind of lake town. And I kind of like that idea. Okay, let's just continue making rivers, and then we'll add lakes as we go as well. So let's go ahead and put a lake or a river over here. Just remember that small meanders. It goes right to here. Let's put another one over here. Kind of go into it. And then we can even have a river that goes to a lake, but it doesn't go all the way to the ocean. So I might want to consider putting like a lake right here. That would be kind of good. Let's also put... let's see here. I don't know about those mountains. Let's start with this one. Put a little river here. Just remember those small meanders like I've been saying. And I don't want it to be all the same, like straight. So I'm going to have it kind of meander around a little bit. One thing I noticed about this lake that I made over here is it kind of has a straight kind of line to it. And I don't really like that. So I what I'll try to do is break it up. I know it's not the most realistic, but it looks better than just having a straight curved line here. I know on maps they kind of look like this, but I actually kind of find that adding a little bit of more exaggerated meandering to it gives the lake way, or the river, way more character. This is just my personal preference. I know that some people who make maps are just very, they're very concerned and focused on making a very realistic looking map. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. Nothing wrong with that. And if you're that type, then maybe these more exaggerated meanders might not be for you. That's okay. All right, let's just keep going here. There's a lot of green over here. See how kind of rich, dark green this is? I would expect a lot of water to be in this area because of just how green it is. So we'll throw in lots of little lakes and rivers in here. Put one there. Let's put one over here. I don't want to put it right adjacent to it because then it looks like it's a continuation of another river. So instead, I'll start over here. And I've kind of made that mistake in the past where I'll accidentally make a river that's adjacent to another one, and then it kind of looks like they're the same river. I don't want to make that mistake, so don't do that. Okay. All right, we're getting meanders going there. Okay, let's keep adding another one here. And then I do want to have some going into the mountains here. We want to have some lakes over here, so I'll continue one here, and then we'll put like a lake in here somewhere right over there, and then we'll make another one over here, and then we'll put a lake. It's connected to a lake over here. All right, cool. Yep. Oh, yeah. Oh, heck yeah. I love that idea. Great. Let me show you a cool trick on that. So let's actually go bring up the cliffs, and I'll show you a cool trick. This is something that I want to do with rivers. So if you wanted to show that there was, you could, well, instead of making the cliffs first, let's just put what cliffs I have along a river already. So you'll put some cliffs here, put them along here like this. Like that. Okay. I mean, yes and no. I mean, if you wanted to show a waterfall, my suggestion is just make it to where it's a place that your players are going to go to, right? And they're actually going to have like an encounter there. So if there is going to be a waterfall, something like a waterfall in this place, that's cool. Just make sure that there's an actual location with that going on, because what ends up happening is that if you just have a random waterfall somewhere, I feel like your players are going to be attracted to it and they're going to want to go to it and then discover there's nothing special about it. So if you are going to put some waterfalls on your map, make an interesting encounter there. Put a thieves' fort or inside of the waterfall. Maybe put a pitched battle there or whatever it is. So if you're going to do that, just kind of remember that. And we will put a waterfall in here. Let's put one in here. It's a little weird being next to this volcano right here, but I think that's actually kind of fun because we're going to have a little bit of two things here, fire and water, a nice little combo there. But yeah, let's put in a waterfall. I'm glad that you said that. Thank you, by the way. Great choice, Andalurian. Let's do that. Okay, so let's put like a little waterfall in here. Okay, and let's bring the brightness down. You see, the problem is that you notice how bright blue that is? So if we bring the brightness down to match the same here, and the other thing I might want to consider doing is maybe putting some water down there. So I'll go in with the shape tool, and we're at the 5 setting already. Let's just go ahead and make a little river here at the bottom. Oopsie, it didn't stay there, my mistake. Let's do that. Wonder why it's not getting any bigger than that. There we go. Okay, that was bizarre. Let's scale it down and put that underneath like that. There we go. And then I'll redo the cliff here as well. Because what I'll do, or not the cliff, but the river. I'll redo the river because I'm going to use these cliffs to kind of show that. So that'll be kind of fun. So let's use this one instead. I think that looks good. The objective is to create a canyon, right? So the water is going to be flowing through this part of the canyon. That's what I want to show. So let's go ahead and create a canyon with a river going through it. Cool. Okay, let's do that. Let's rotate this a little bit more this way, like that. There we go. Okay, let's flip this one. There we go. And then, let me think for a minute here. Let's put in, if you missed the episode where we showed you how to do all these cool tips and tricks with cliffs, definitely go check that out, because cliffs just add a whole new dimension to your map. So I totally recommend that you check out that episode where we covered that. Okay. All right, let's move this out of the way because it's kind of overlapping the water a little bit. Okay, there we go. And then I can go in with my river here and just have it be, oopsie, let's use the right scale. There we go. And just kind of have it meander through this area right here like that. There you go. Okay, so super easy to actually make a waterfall there, and I think that looks good. I think waterfalls are a good touch to it, and I think maybe the entrance to getting something that we can talk about a little bit about lore, just a teeny bit, is that maybe the entrance to a volcano layer is through that waterfall, and then they have to go through this series of dungeons through the mountain. And then once you've gotten through the mountain bits, and then it will lead into an entrance that goes into a volcano. So we can even put a little inset. If you're not sure what an inset is, it's a little square or a little section on the side of the map that shows a different portion of the map. Like, for instance, how do I show an underground or a subterranean section of the map? I need to include what's called an inset. Okay, I'm not going to make the inset right now. We'll wait for the different. We'll wait for the lore part to kind of create that bits, but you get the general idea there. We still have about 20 minutes left before our hour mark is up, so let's just keep adding in those lakes that I was talking about. So let's go ahead and do that. And you know what I'm going to do? This is something that I normally do, and I should have mentioned it earlier, is that I make a whole series of lakes first, and then I'll go ahead and then add them around. So I'll make one shape of lake, and then I'll make another shape of a lake, and then I'll make like a crescent shape of a lake, like this, and then I'll make another shape like this, and then another shape like this, and just make a whole bunch of shapes. Now, once you've made all those shapes, now you can flip, rotate them, and do all these things with them. So if I scale them down, and now I don't have to worry about making a whole bunch of lakes anymore. I can just kind of add them to different things as I want. So I'll put one over here. That's a little too close. Let's put one. Oh, there, one right there. There's where another lake is right there. Perfect. Let's go ahead and put a lake over here. Put it behind the mountain. Remember, one of those big tricks I talked about was overlapping. Overlapping is super important. If you want to show depth, you use overlapping. Overlap things on top of each other. It's a great little trick, okay? And then when you're putting a series of lakes together, notice how these two lakes are of a similar size. Always remember to have multiple sizes. This is a great way of showing a more natural look to it. So I could copy and paste. I've got two medium-sized ones. Let's put an even smaller one, like over here somewhere. I think right there should look good. So a great little trick there is to make a whole bunch of them. And that way you can kind of place them wherever you want all over the map. Something that I kind of do. Again, you don't have to use this method. You can totally use the subtract mode of the mask tool. It has its benefits of using that. It's a lot. You can use the mask effects. But if that's not what you want to do, if you prefer to use the shape tool, you can. Okay, let's take a step back and kind of look at it. Yeah, I like the way it's going. The ocean painting, there's some things about it that I don't like. We'll fix that, like the little bubble, the little diffusion parts I did right here. That just doesn't really look that great, so we'll end up fixing that. And we'll make a whole bunch of changes in the end. Let's just keep adding more and more lakes. I still have, in rivers, I have a lot here, so let's just make sure that I cover it all. This area is kind of barren right here, so let's throw in a lake, or let's do a river. Let's throw some contrast. So cool trick here, I'll make a river that kind of goes through here like this. And then a trick to show that the water is that you can paint in a little bit of grass just around where the river is, because it's where water is, right? We're in a kind of a wasteland in this kind of area with all this dark brown. Go ahead and let this load here. Oops, it's a little slow to load. And I'm just going to take this green texture. I just put it all along the edge of this river. And it's what you would expect, right? From water comes life. So when you have a river, oopsie, what's that? Oh, it looks like I have a hill there. Okay, so you can see I have a little bit of green along there. Another cool trick I want to mention is to do that overlapping, right? So have a a hill that's going to be overlapping the river. And we'll change the height a little bit so you can kind of see it's covering a little bit of the river there. Same thing. Let's use another one. We'll copy and paste another one, put it right here, bring the scale up. And we'll put it just right there, overlap. Let's put another right here. We got 3 hills side by side. I don't want to have them make a perfect triangle, so I'll move it a little bit off to the side, like right there. And so now you have these hills right here. Big part of the making a piece pop out is that using a little bit of the green along this river here. That's that lighter color against that darker blue, and so it pops out there as well. Okay, let's take a step back. At 127 changes, we should probably save and continue adding more lakes. In the next episode, I'm kind of thinking we will be doing our biome stuff, and that, which I'm super excited about, and we'll probably get started on our lore. And what we'll do is we'll come up with lore for each biome as we go. So maybe in the first biome, we'll make a desert or something, and then we'll kind of go over that. And hey, I would love it if you guys, if all of you who are watching, if you want to help me come up with lore, I'm fine with that because I think that's fun. And I'm lazy. I'll make you guys do some of the work, okay? Just teasing. I love making lore. Lore is a lot of fun. So, but I'll be showing you how I come up with lore too, which I think you'll find interesting. Remember that method. The land comes first, and then you can kind of base all of that off of that. Okay, we got our saves there. Perfect. Yeah, oh, yeah, Chungus. They're 7th graders. Yep, that's going to happen. Okay, let's keep going here. I've noticed that there's a ton of areas that don't have rivers, so this is going to be the last bits that we're going to do. We're just going to add in the last bits of rivers and then lakes, and then we're going to call it good. I hope you guys found this useful. I certainly have a lot of tips and tricks about that ocean painting in the beginning. Remember, I showed you how to do that darker part. I really like the ocean painting. I know it's more time consuming for sure, but it's just so much fun to kind of create your own interesting kind of effects for the ocean. I just think it looks more interesting when you do it yourself with painting. Okay, we'll put here, put a river there. Let's see here. There, there, there. Ooh, let's put one over here. Might be a good idea. Okay. Remember, I'm going to try not to have those big meanders. Yeah, okay, there we go. Just remember, they start in the mountains and they go towards the ocean. That's it. Okay, let's see here. Oh, you know, there's a nice little ravine right here. Let's go ahead and just use this to cause our river to meander. You see, aren't you glad we did the cliffs first before we did the rivers? Because now you have some cliffs to have the rivers go around. So nice little trick there. Just kind of remember that. Let's just keep adding in. We're going to add more and more and more and more. Oopsie, wrong one, my bad. There we go. Okay. All right, there we go. Oops, I think it's on the wrong layer. We have to push it down a layer. There we go. I can see a little bit too big there. Let's just change this up to make it a little bit bigger so I can see it more. There we go, much better. Oh, I like that location too. That's a good one. Let's see here. Oh, there's tons of locations up here. Let's put some rivers in here. Not going to put too many, just put 1 or 2. All right. Hey, first-time chatter. Glad that you are here. I love first-time chatters. Love new people. Okay. Most of our rivers. Let's take a look down here. I might do something different with the rivers here. This is in a frozen area, so it might not be a bad idea to change this into like a frozen river. And so I'll change the brightness on this, desaturate it, and let's just put one down to see what it looks like. Okay, let's take a look at it. Let's maybe change the contrast a little bit. So it's a little bit, let's bring the brightness up. There we go. Okay. Now this should represent a frozen river. So we'll have it coming from the mountains. This way. I think a frozen river is a good choice here. Put it right there. Okay. Oopsie. I think I might have missed a spot there. Let's just scale it up a little bit to reach the ocean. There we go. Cool. Let's add a couple more frozen rivers. I'm going to put them down at the bottom where it's the coldest. Kind of makes sense. Put in these frozen rivers. Okay. Let's see here. There's probably going to need to be more frozen rivers up here as well at the top. So we'll go up here. Let's put in some frozen rivers. Now, what I might want to do is have partially frozen and the other one not frozen. So right here where the white ends, and then I'll switch over and then go to blue. And now you have where the water has kind of thawed a little bit as it goes towards the ocean. And I might make it just a little bit brighter as well. It seems a little dark, so we'll bring the brightness up. There we go. Okay. So you have a half frozen river or 3/4 frozen river, right? And then it thaws the further south that you go towards the equator where it gets warmer. So now you have that. Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, just a couple more rivers, I think, and then we are going to be good to go. Add in some over here. I'm noticing that there's just no rivers in this area, and I need to add them. These are kind of big meanders right here, a little exaggerated, but I'm probably going to put some really interesting landscape in there. So we'll change that up in a little bit here. Okay, add that there. Oh, there's no rivers over here. Let's add in a couple. You guys like that little trick where I talked about how to make your landmass pop out with the little blue right here? Just makes it look like there's a cliff there when you zoom out. See, it looks like it's popped up. So nice little depth trick there. It's like one of my favorite little tricks that I like to do. Really helps to, because the one thing that you can't really show on a world map, and it's kind of hard, is just the depth part, right? When you look at a lot of maps, it really, they just seem kind of flat. And when we do our biomes, I'll show you guys a really cool trick on how to create this sense of height on your map. So we don't have enough time in this stream for that. We just wanted to cover the bodies of water here. But I think that's it. I'm just going to save it. We're going to call it good. I think I've added just about all the rivers and lakes that I want. I might add some more rivers and lakes off screen or something. It won't be more than just one or two. I don't want to do too much off screen because I know it can kind of confuse people. They're like, wait a second, that lake just magically materialized from part 4 to part 5. How did that happen? Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate that. Next month, we'll do part 5. We're going to cover the biomes. We're going to be showing you how to do all the biome development, how to put in the things, how to put in all the different forests and all that stuff. We're going to be putting in the lore, all of that stuff. So I'm super excited about that. Thank you, Musical Rogue. Appreciate you so much. Thank you, Jonathan Frost. See ya, Delta Jen. All of you. Have a wonderful weekend, okay? Yeah, see ya, Andorian. Take care, everyone. Merry map making, okay?